So it's been one more week of a little bit of craziness, one more week of a little bit of, oh my goodness, really? As I watch the news and watch what's happening in Washington, D.C., what's happening in Israel, what's happening around our country. And of course, when I look at all of it, like you, it leaves me with a few moments of nothing what to say. How do you respond when you see things like Cornell University needing to close today because of threats against the Jewish students there? Or the fact that, as Marlene sent me in an email earlier this week, donors from Penn have pulled out, Columbia have pulled out, and other universities because of the anti-Semitism is so extreme. The 20 different law firms in New York City wrote letters to major universities where they get their students from, asking them to remind their students of the need to make sure that they're capable of functioning in a multicultural and diverse background, because the rhetoric that's occurring now is not indicative of that capacity at this time. Of course, it's acceptable for all of us to have our own opinions. After all, if I were to ask all of you what your thoughts are on any of the above topics, you may even have more than one opinion. And after all, we're adults, and some of those opinions are in fact going to contradict one another. The question is, are we able to maintain contradictory thoughts at the same time? Are we that mature? Or have we digressed or regressed back toward an earlier stage of our development where we were concrete thinkers with short attention spans, able to only hold one idea at a time? When we look in this week's portion, one of the stories that you are all very familiar with because we read it not once a year, but twice a year, the story of Abraham and Isaac. The story where Isaac gets to tag along with his dad who has such a strong conviction about everything that he is going to do, that he is so certain that he is right, that he doesn't tell his wife because he knows that she's going to try to talk him out of it, that he pushes against God just a little, but nothing like he did in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, that he walks in the desert for 3 days with his son after telling the young men who are with him to chill out, sit back, relax, they'll be back together. That the experience of almost sacrificing his future being, of course, Isaac, comes to such pain that the minute Sarah hears about it, she drops dead. We see, I think, what it can look like when we hold so steadfast to an opinion. The pain that it can inflict. Isaac, we're told, doesn't speak to his father ever again. I wonder why. He almost died at Daddy's hand. Sarah's gone. And Abraham kind of just wanders off, gets remarried, has a new family, and almost shifts gears entirely. He was so firmly right, so concrete, that it almost destroyed his entire life and almost cost him his future. It didn't take one angel, it took two to intervene, because he believed he understood God, what God told him. I don't know about you, but if God were to tell me to sacrifice Daniel or Aiden or David, I might scratch my head, wonder, check myself into a psychiatric hospital and think that I've got schizophrenia. Or say, that's not the God I'm following. I look at some of our leaders who are so firm in their convictions that it is inconceivable for them to hold opinions that they're not in concert with. That we have the Speaker of the House, and forgive me for speaking in politics, but I am just for a second, who has done things that is not exactly in line with Jewish values, who has engaged in conduct that I question, and I'm speaking of the conversion camps and counseling that he's attempted to do, that fails to recognize that we're created all in B'Tselem Elohim, in God's image, that he forgot that part of the Bible. A person who said, I believe in the Bible, that's all you need to know about me, just check there. And I'll say this as someone who teaches the Bible at Mercer. The Bible is an anthology of contradicting opinions that are not in line with one another, that I could sit and list a variety of which simply boggle the mind. And that's okay, because we don't focus on those parts. We focus, frankly, on the parts that we want to uplift. We focus on the parts that inspire us, that push us to become better people, that challenge us, that force us to grow. Because after all, that's what mature people do. They're able to have conversations, even with sacred documents, even with things that they don't agree with, because in doing so, they may, in fact, become a more whole person and be able to see things from a different perspective. When I look, by the way, also at the same thing in Israel, and I see leaders there who have the same narrow view, makes my heart break. Hamas, no different. We found ourselves at a point in time where we have very narrow views and we are so fixated on them. And it's scary because the consequences can be heartbreaking and devastating for all of us. Well, I'm grateful to be living in Middle Georgia. Didn't think I would say that, but true. A place where, aside from some craziness this summer, there hasn't really been anti-Semitism. I can also tell you it's a place that has embraced me, a place that has a long history of being warm and welcoming to a variety of different people. A place that welcomes stores like the Bohemian Den, that's a very out proud store owned by a very out proud gay man. A place where there's different ideas of what does it mean to exist as a good person, that welcomes various perspectives, where everyone can at least feel as if they have a place. That makes me proud. That makes me happy. That reminds me of where we can go and what we can do and what we can in fact be like, and share that. And I don't see that in places like social media so much anymore, and I don't see that in other places where I have friends who are struggling and scared and in doubt. And I'm sure you do as well when you call to friends and live in places that, well, aren't Middle Georgia. They too may be struggling, they too may be fearful, and they too may wonder. I think all we can do in this time, as we see increased polarization, increased people who are so firm in their conviction that they fail to recognize alternative points of view, is with gentleness and compassion. Remember the story of Abraham, who taught us what not to do, not to be so firm in his fixed belief that it hurt his entire family, fracturing everybody, but rather be open, be gentle, and greet others with compassion and love. Shabbat Shalom.